Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation. My name is Hala.
Sorry, I was finding an unmute button when I'm screen sharing. My name's Ina.
I'm Lisa.
And I'm Ryan.
And as they mentioned, Hung is not with us today, but he was the fifth member of our project.
So a little bit about the motivation for this project. We're Duke students, and we know that every day that Duke collects tons of data about us. For example, whether it's card swipes or food swipes. And we're just curious to know what other sources of data Duke collects. And this can help us be more informed about our privacy. You might also be a social science researcher at Duke, and you need to collect data from the different cultural centers on campus. You might want to gauge how many students actually use them as a sanctuary. And right now, in order to get that data, you'd have to send an email to the owner, wait for them to approve, de-identify the data, and then possibly hand it over to you. And you'd hope for a quicker way and more centralized point of access to the institutional data through one simple request button. And right now, we don't have that. Or finally, imagine you're the maintainer of WU or BC, and you'd like to see the total number of card swipes into each building for maybe the summer session. And that might help so you can adjust the energy uses accordingly during the summer. And so our solution to all those problems is Data Foundry. And Data Foundry is a data platform that displays a catalog of institutional data. And you can kind of think of it as like an interface or a portal where users can request data and which de-identified data is then made accessible based on your net ID. And just to clarify, very important, as we build this app, we are emphasizing data protection as a priority. So while we are making it more transparent about what data Duke collects, and we're streamlining the request process, we're not at all making it easier to gain access to any sensitive data sources. So now my teammates are going to walk us through developing the web app.
So our stack looks like this currently. For the front end part of the app, we used CSS, JavaScript, HTML, as well as like Tailwind CSS and Next.js. For the back end, we used Fast ABI because it was really fast and easy to learn, as well as PostgreSQL for our database. We also used Docker for containerization.
And now I'll talk a little bit about our first phase, and this was just the base data catalog. So right here, you can see this was kind of our like landing page, and it's got different institutional data sets such as Duke card accesses or transactions. There's also an overview and description of the data, and that's mainly to help you obviously understand what the data actually is and how you might use it, because sometimes these data sets could be a little bit confusing. We're also making sure to put Duke's policies for the data, and most importantly, how to request access from the Duke data owners, as this will be more of a centralized place for that. And in getting this data, we had to contact many data owners. Some specific ones we reached out to at first were Duke Human Resources, Student Records, and the Facilities Management. And while reaching out about these things, one thing we really learned, and it just really drove this in, was how sensitive this type of data really is. And that makes privacy even more important in this project, as we do want to keep data anonymous and de-identifiable.
Yeah, so on to the second phase of developing our app. While our data catalog only involved metadata on the data sources themselves, the second phase involved actually fetching and displaying some of the data to our users. So once a user is granted access, we hand them some aggregation and visualization tools to look at the data that they've just gained access to. We want to emphasize that none of the data displayed on our website will be in raw form. It will be aggregated in some sense, mostly it's de-identified. And our aggregation tools are just to further help users use the data to the best of their needs. We do understand that allowing users to aggregate upon too many metrics might make it easy for users to re-identify certain individuals within the data set. And so we are capping the number of metrics at 2 aggregations so that certain individuals can be re-identified through the aggregation tools. We also are aware that Duke does have current data classification standards, and we're being careful to adhere those regulations as to protect the privacy of anyone at Duke. So you can see this is the page that you would land to if you click out of the data catalog. So for student records, there's a request access button that just brings users to the current registrar form that they have to request student record data. Whereas for Duke Card data, which is like door swipe data, users, if granted access, will be able to see a view data button, which allows them to bring them to this third site, which they can filter the data by date, view all data, or aggregate upon certain metrics. And so we like to mention that there is never going to be a view data button for the student records page just because of how sensitive the data is.
So the third phase of our project was implementing ShibWith authentication. So there are two main reasons why we wanted to do this. The first and main one being privacy and security. So because our website includes a lot of Duke specific data and much of that data is very sensitive, we want to make sure that only Duke personnel can have access to view or request this data. So we would do that by authenticating through their NetID. The second reason is for greater convenience and accessibility in viewing the data. So we want the user to be able to continue to view the data without having to re-request each time. So we would do this by linking the requested data to their NetID so that when the user logs in and they go to the My Datasets tab on our website, they can see all the datasets that they have requested or have been granted access to.
And now we're going to show you a little demo of our web app. So at the beginning, I authenticate using my NetID, and it leads us to this page, the landing page. You can see the types of data we have, HR data, IDM, any types of data, as well as the person of contact, as well as like a little blurb about the data. And I can implement filters, like multiple filters, to see which office I want to see the data from. This will be useful to, in case there's like tons of data, you don't have to like scroll through everything, you can just find it, as well as sensitivity. I can choose restricted, public, whichever is accessible to mine, as well as a search bar for an easier query. And you can search using the person of contact or the data source. Our documentation page features a little short description about what Data Foundry is for the users. For more transparency, we have also frequently asked questions to address any questions the user might have. And now I'll take you through the process of viewing and requesting data. So first, if I want to view the data, I can view it by date. If I want to see May 1st till May 3rd, or just the data on May 1st, that is possible, as long as it's in the date range specified. And first, I don't want to aggregate. If I don't want to aggregate by anything, I can see all the data available. And I can aggregate by building ID, building name, affiliation if I want more specific data. Affiliation, such as like who entered, if it's a faculty, student, staff, or building ID. And if I want to request access to the data, we've made it so that it links to the actual Duke card request data, which the user can access to, which is an easier part. And finally, I can log out.
Yeah, so as our time working on Data Foundry wraps up, we do have some future steps that we think would be good for the project. The first would just include partnering with more data owners around the institution. So the more robust of a catalog we can create, the better we can serve the users so that they can find truly all the data sources from the institution on our catalog. And with this, we would also like to streamline the process of which data owners can submit their data sets. So right now, the process of submitting a data set would require one of us to manually add it to our database, which of course course, isn't very efficient and takes a long time. And so if we can find a way to streamline this process, that would make it a lot easier for data owners to submit their data sets to be displayed on our site. And lastly, we also want to utilize Grouper to help manage permission statuses, because things like ongoing permissions might change if someone leaves Duke, or if someone should only be granted access to data sets for their, say, like the time of which they're doing research. All of this will be much better managed through Grouper. Using the IDs, we can kind of group certain people into different permission statuses for each data set. But with that, we have been super thankful to be working on this project the past 10 weeks, and we're open to any questions.